My name is Kit Kyte. I'm the CEO of Checkit PLC. It's a technology business focused on operational excellence for distributed workforces.
And how did you get into what you do? Was it fate or by design?
It was a bit of both. I suppose I've always been drawn to building, scaling organizations, challenges, taking on complex problems, creating clarity, bit of focus, bit of momentum. So there was some intention behind it, Ryan. But of course, timing is everything, isn't it? So I happened to be working for a large kind of US tech company when the opportunity came along, which you're very familiar with. And the rest is history.
Very good. What's the most challenging part of your job?
Aside from managing the shareholder base and making sure that everyone's pleased all the time, no, I'm joking. They are, I suppose,
Yeah, is there any time for anything else?
Is there ever any time for anything else? Headstrong, chairman. No, these are all parts of the job that we love. I think honestly speaking, I think the difference between long-term kind of value creation, as you'd expect with a sort of public company and that sort of that dynamic versus running with the daily volatility that will happen in a business. It requires steady vision, constant reallocation of attention, resources, and energy. So it seems like it's quite a cognitive load environment that's quite high. But you just need to be quite nimble and adaptable. So it's both challenging but also quite energizing, rewarding. So that's great.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I mean, having worked with some listed businesses, I think everyone wants a long-term vision and to hit long-term objectives, right? But still, there's a share price and a quarter number that you need to hit, at almost at any cost sometimes. So I can see how that would be challenging. And I'll get in a second. I'll get into sort of how you deal with that and cope with that. But firstly, like, where do you draw inspiration? Where do you go? Coaches, mentors?
Yes.
I know you like nature, running, exercise.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you know, for me, a lot of the nature outdoors kind of trail running, hiking, being in nature. Actually, it's such a great juxtaposition to being in a kind of high work environment that's where I get to distill whatever thinking, relieve a bit of stress. And it's how it goes. It's often that in those environments where your best thoughts come through, or where you get clarity. So for me, that's a fundamental part of my life personally. Exercise, all that has to happen pretty much every day. And the other part, actually, I'm quite fortunate. Like, I've got some mentors in the space. Got former CEOs, captains of industry for some of the largest FTSE 100 businesses that are mentors and sort of friends in some respects, who are able to give me their advice in my little situation here, and that's quite helpful. So having people, friends, colleagues that you can bounce ideas off, objective people, well, that's really helpful for me, and that helps you deal with some of the noise actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I think having mentors is really important, whether it's sort of formal or informal. I mean, these people that you're talking about, how did you come across them? And actually, more importantly, if you were encouraging those to have mentors, if they didn't, how would you encourage them to sort of find them, if that makes sense?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question, and I think it's quite easy to get very, very busy with the day to day, isn't it? And this, and then you're trying to balance your personal life. There's only so much spare time in your day, week, month to develop those touch points. And I'm not sure I even am doing the best job I could do. But basically the way I'm thinking about it is it's almost like a part of your job. If you're going to be successful, then there's a certain percentage of time that must be dedicated to the nebulous stuff, such as building relationships with people who've got experience using, it's a reciprocal arrangement, really. They help you, you help them. And it's a bit like when you're building pipeline, right? You've got to do it because you know that down the line it's actually more helpful being able to triangulate different points of view than it is sitting in your own echo chamber. So it's just, whether you like it or not, you have to do it. And there's some people who are absolute masters of maintaining and building networks. But the true benefit, I just think that the real benefit is you get external objective thought from people who are completely not in the day to day, who are also not on the board, and they're not non-execs, and yet can level set where some of your thoughts are, can help you triangulate. So that's how I do it. But I think, literally you sit there and assess, do I know anyone? Like, do I actually know, do my friends' dads or anyone or mothers, were they successful enough? Is there a way I can get in there? And you build out from there. And can I join some networking club, or other people I meet in the context of business or sports or anything else where they've got to connect, and just ask the question? Because I've found that if you just ask, people are more often than not willing to open a door and help, and because it is based upon reciprocity. So but it is really, really powerful, and it's very, very important as you go through life. There's actually a really interesting, you may have heard of this, there's also this idea of a reverse mentor. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
So a reverse mentor is a similar logic, which I'm starting to think about, which is, this is where you actually you deliberately try and get mentorship from people who would be a lot younger and more junior than you in life, the workspace, whatever, to get a sense, get another triangulation point coming up at you. Because again, you might be thinking about things from my age and my demographic, my position, but again, that's not covering all the bases. So cultivating reverse mentorship is also quite an interesting thing to consider.
I think that would be really quite interesting to explore. I mean, I certainly know when I'm helping people who are not as experienced as me, where someone says, can you have a chat to someone or whatever, I think often in that conversation it's quite rewarding being able to help, because you can kind of help them see around corners a bit. But I think often in those conversations it actually helps me to gain some clarity. So I can that's a really good idea. I can see how that'd be useful. And I'm always surprised, because in my job I'm often asking people like you for help, and I know you quite well, and obviously you're always willing to help, which is great. But sometimes I do have to ask people that I don't quite know or connected, and I'm often surprised as to how often people are just happy to have a call and help. So as you say, like, I think if you just ask the question, I think more often than not someone's going to come back and say they're happy to help or give some time. So what advice could you give for building high performing teams generally? And I'm guessing you had a pretty good head start in the army, but
you know what, that's a good point. I mean, I was very fortunate. I think so in some ways I sort of cheated, because the regiment that I was in, the Gurkhas, have basically high performing by definition. So actually the first challenge was, I need to am I high performing enough to be worthy of their respect, and then to be able to then lead them, right, the soldiers. But that being said, you're always looking to fine tune and optimize how you'd execute in that environment. So that was, for me, that was a really good exposure to what high performing teams feel like. So in a sense, I got a good sense. It's a completely different world, very different set of outcomes expected, arguably a lot more intense stress and pressure in certain ways. But I got a good sense of what it feels like when the train set is really like operating in a slick way. And then the question then becomes, how do you achieve a similar feeling, set of outcomes in a business environment? And I think, and that comes with a whole different set of challenges, because the leadership requirement in business is pretty different from how it would be in the military. And the outcomes that you need to achieve are very different as well. So, but you can't escape from, I don't think you can fundamentally, you can't escape from clarity of vision, like kind of radical accountability of yourself and others. And then there's that sort of saying, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. So that's the bar, right? You've got to set that bar, and it's painful to keep setting the bar very high, because the times you'd rather you wish others would be automatically raising the bar ahead of you.
Yes.
But that
Yes.
comes if you consistently set the bar high and then call out with accountability when we're not making that bar,
Yes.
and then that's how you elevate performance. And because you don't rise towards your rhetoric, you kind of fall to your sort of minimum standard. And if that minimum standard is very high, then you've got a pretty consistently high performing team. But it's not an easy path, and it's discipline, just rigorous discipline.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and interestingly, and you did one of these. So as you know, we assessed 30, 40 top performing CROs, go-to-market leaders. I know you're a CEO, but actually something that came out as a common theme was that, and all of those have been very successful, is that they have very high standards and they hold people accountable, almost to the point where they, in theory, don't give enough support. They sort of they'll give a certain amount of support, but then they expect high standards. So I think it's a balance with the accountability thing, because you want to develop people, but I think having the high standards is really important. And when was the Gurkhas regiment? When was that formed?
So the actually very brief history of the Gurkhas, they're actually about 200 and probably 210, 220 years old actually, as a regiment, right? So they actually were formed back in the days of the British Empire, when the British were expanding through India, and they came into Nepal and effectively hit a bit of a stalemate up in the mountains there, with vicious band of kind of warrior kind of clan, which were basically the Gurkhas at that point. And so effectively the solution to it was to invite them to join, and they created their own regiment to kind of embark on and join forces with the British Empire. And that's really where it started. And they've been in every engagement and campaign the British have been involved with ever since, which is numerous at this point. And they've been the tip of the spear in a number of different ways actually. So fascinating history to that regiment, and alive and well today.
No, that is fascinating, and I can imagine 200 years of tweaking how an operation works, right, will get you to a point where
they definitely know what good looks like.
Sort of, high performing, right? So.
They know what good looks like at this point. They actually have a word that is called Kaida. And Kaida basically means their ethos. It's a bit like the All Blacks, they have that kind of stuff. But the Gurkha Kaida is a set of basically values and standards unique to them, that is been forged throughout their history. That is the minimum standard that they must be holding themselves to at all times. And they're basically indoctrinated it. As soon as they turn up as young soldiers and riflemen, it's an entire ecosystem, self-reinforcing all the time. It's something to behold actually.
Yes. Do you, that kind of minimum standards thing, is it something that you sort of implement formally? I guess you could do informally, right? But across the organization?
Yeah, well, I suppose if you're going to be managerial about it, you've got the OKR process that we run with the KPIs and the kind of strategic initiatives that we run off that. And every year, effectively when we're building out our budget, we set those company OKRs, company KPIs, basically the minimum numbers. It's a bit different there, because we make them deliberately quite stretch. So it's not just a minimum number. It's like, how hard can we make it to an extent, but still be real, still be believable. And then each of the functions make theirs. And I think that within that, you what you're really doing is just identifying, if nothing else, forget about everything else in the business. If we are tracking towards these particular targets and numbers, because it's normally number based, accurately enough, consistently enough, then the business is in a healthy place. And even if it's deliberately stretched and we know we're not necessarily going to make it in a particular quarter, half, or year, it's the aspirational target. And I think that's then setting a minimum expectation. If you look at go-to-market, which is obviously something you guys specialize in, that minimum expectation translates through to a certain amount of pipeline coverage at a certain level by
Yes.
region, by rep, by person. It also translates to certain other types of growth metric that are really specific to the business, that if we're not there or thereabouts or tracking towards it, then we're going to need to go back in and do some fine tuning. It doesn't mean, oh, it's all broken. It just means,
Yeah.
what do we need to fine tune to make it
Yes.
better? And we're still
Yeah.
very much on that journey, to be honest with you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I can see how, as you say, I mean, you need to have something in place, and it's almost I'm not going to say a positive thing regardless, but if the organization is not hitting those sort of key metrics, then at least you know that you need to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And sort of look forward a little bit. I was going to ask who's the best revenue leader you've ever worked with, but which is my job, I guess. But if you think about the best revenue leader you've worked with, what do you think made or makes them successful?
That's a good question. Actually, it's a great question. I suppose pattern recognition and discipline would be how I would probably characterize that. What do I mean by that? I mean, seeing the best revenue leader I worked with in my career to date, someone who actually was a bit of a mentor, wasn't a bit, was a real mentor to me when I was coming up in the kind of go-to-market space. Just saw the field clearly, understood the key aspects of deal mechanics to make things happen, had the right rhythm and energy about them, and also I use this phrase like culminating events. They created within a sort of life cycle of deal, there's typically a culminating event you need to try and agitate towards, where you've got, if that culminating event happens, is taking place, it means you're pretty close to getting the thing done, but it also means you're taking control of your own destiny in that respect. And the best revenue leader, the person I'm thinking of here, would force a culminating event to happen. Actually, interesting enough, without saying much else, this revenue leader has since sold a deal to my company, right? Okay. So it's effectively selling to me now. And I saw it in action, and it was good, and it was right, and it actually achieved an outcome. So again, it was being very honest, but holding himself, his teams, but also the customer to a level of account via a culminating event to make something happen or not happen. But let's move on. And I think too many people get stuck at that stage and drift around a bit. So yeah, I just found that as and that can be applied to a small sized deal or opportunity, or it can be applied to a deal that might be many tens or greater of millions of pounds worth of kind of total contract value, right? So it's the same principles at work. Yeah, so that was something that I found deeply impressive, and I've hopefully tried to replicate a bit in my own life.
Yeah, and that I guess there's probably a challenge just in understanding what that culminating event is, right? So he would get into any sort of role quite quickly. I'm sure if he'd been there for quite some time, he'd recognize, but he would know that if we get to this situation, we're probably in a good place.
Yeah.
As a salesperson, that's what you need to work to, as in to give them clarity and focus. Okay.
Everything leads to the culminating event. If you haven't got in your mind this understanding that there must be a culminating event, if you're just thinking that at some point it'll just come my way. Yeah, I've done this, I've done all these other aspects of the sales cycle, but I'm okay. It won't come your way. You don't have ownership of it, so you must drive the culminating event. And I find that concept of like, it's actually one of my own measures I use with when I'm reviewing deals and opportunities inside the business. I'm like, show me, you're telling me it's this good, it's this size. You can show me all the other evidence points that tell us that we're in the right place, and all the acronyms that we all go around. Show me the culminating event that makes this real for me. If it isn't there, it isn't real, because particularly in this market, no one's going to sign you a small, mid-size or large-sized check deal without a culminating event. They just won't, and so with absent a culminating event, I always just discount it. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means we need to work harder to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really interesting, and something that I think would be quite useful to a lot of people. So someone did once say to me, and it did stick with me. It was sort of, if you're not sitting in a boardroom, you're not doing a deal. So, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
in this day and age, I think, I'm not saying that you can't do deals if you're not sitting in a boardroom, right? But I think at least it's something to work towards.
yeah. Go as high up the chain as you can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Or if someone's had 3 or 4 half-an-hour Zoom calls and they think, the deal's there. I know that some businesses can do that. Um, but I do think, like, if you can and you can get in front of someone face to face, that makes a big difference. So, and maybe you've answered part of this, but when you're diagnosing or assessing a go-to-market function specifically, so let's say that you get into a new role and you very quickly want to get a sense of where they're at from a go-to-market point of view. Like, is there one thing in particular that you might look for first? I mean, it could be one or two or three, and it might be varied. Um,
yeah.
maybe it is, asking about, asking the salespeople what the culminating event is, and then show me how
Pretty
many of
much.
those.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. For me, it's about signal to noise ratio. That's what I call
Yeah,
it. There's
yeah,
effectively any pipeline is filled with lots of noise. So what's the signal within that? And then, because I don't know, let's say I just turned up, I'm day one assessing the go-to-market function. The most valuable asset in that go-to-market function is the state of the pipeline, because that's what all the effort is leading towards, and then closing it, right? So signal to noise ratio, are we actually, so I'm just asking a few open questions, are we focused on the right markets? We're doing busy work, but is it busy work in the right direction?
yeah,
Are we in the right verticals? People talk about the size of the pipe. Kind of almost don't care about the size of the pipeline. It's all about the quality of the pipeline, isn't it?
yeah,
Because size is irrelevant. It can oftentimes be full of guff. Um, and then once you've satisfied that that we're broadly speaking in the right markets, and we're playing in the right verticals, and we know what the right use case is, and the quality of the pipeline, the pipeline might be woefully inadequate in terms of coverage.
yeah,
But if there's stuff in there that's actually of the right quality, that's the building block. And it's
yes,
actually better to build from there than it is
yeah,
to be the other way around and try and figure out what the signal is in there. And then you and
yeah,
then you and then you can start to put in productivity, governance cycles, and all this kind of stuff, to then really get more laser focused on how we run pipelines and stuff. But that's, you got to start there at least.
yes, yeah. And it makes me think of, so we have a partner, Emma Maslin, who runs a sales training business, and I saw something she'd put out the other day, and she said, I don't know exactly where the analysis came from, but it had been some analysis that they'd done, and she'd said something like 67% of pipeline sits outside of the ICP.
Yeah,
Um, and if you win that deal that's outside ICP, the retention rates, I can't remember exactly what they were, but they're like super low.
yeah,
Um, which yeah, which kind of plays to exactly what you've said, right? It's just quality and where are you going and who are you
yeah.
talking to, and is it the right people? Um, what is there a technology? It's I guess it's kind of slightly not elephant in the room, right? Because
Yeah.
there's something called AI. You might have heard about it, but is there any particular technology or something about your market that excites you most?
Well, yeah, obviously there's the big there's the big trend, which I
Yeah,
which, so the big trend actually excites me, because if you actually look at our business, we've got a reasonably robust, protective kind of moat around us. The big trend should help to fuel our business further, because of that interplay that we have on the frontline workforce. It's difficult to imagine the frontline worker being automated just yet, but they do
yes,
need to be digitized very quickly, and then the assets that they're operating in do need to be automated in terms of the reporting. So I'm excited about this kind of fusion of digitized people on the front line, complemented with, like, automated telemetry reporting, sensor reporting. There's a lot of innovation in that space, and that's basically throwing off loads of data, tons and tons of data. That data and how you harness that, that's when you can then bring all this massive work that's happening around AI to bear on data sets. But if you don't have the data in the first place, organizations are still running blind. And where we are, we're trying to drive operational excellence. It has a material P&L impact now, and it's becoming ever more clear that's the case. So that's quite an exciting time for this particular industry, because it's nascent, it's still fragmented. So there's that represents opportunity, which is always a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, I was with someone the other day that works in a similar business, and he said sort of the what white collar workers, that's been digitized for decades, whereas blue collar frontline, that's an interesting phase coming through.
Yeah.
I have so that's it in terms of the questions, Kit. But I have one more, which is so what we're seeing in the market is we're seeing that sort of scale up organizations, so in that kind of 20 to 200 mil revenue. So investors and chairs are becoming a lot more interested in taking on step up CEOs, and in almost every case, it's we'd like to take on a CRO with potential that can step up into CEO, whether that's immediately or within a fairly short space of time, and then build, make sure that they're supported by, obviously the chair would have to be quite hands-on to start with. Strong CFO, strong CTO, et cetera. And there is, I wouldn't say there's a shortage of good proven CEOs in the market, but often good proven CEOs don't, they've made some money and they don't want to go and do it again. They want to do something different. They want to move up or go plural or whatever. So that's why that's happening. Actually, I would say, like, would you, given you've stepped up from a CRO role, what advice would you give chairs investors who were considering doing that? And what do you think they should look out for? If you think of the gaps that existed when you first stepped up, possibly things that you didn't realize, things that, if you were in their situation and you thought, right, let's take on a CRO, step up into CEO, what would I have to be really sure of to make sure that they're the right person?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it makes sense that people are considering it, I think, but it's not without its risk, obviously. I suppose I would imagine that one of the more vital routes to becoming a step up CEO is if you've got a strong go-to-market background, because basically, it's still the hardest aspect of a business's performance is managing and improving and leading growth. Basically, it's just it's very difficult, and all other things being equal, it's still the thing that makes the difference. So I would say it probably the chair or the investors would need to consider what's the actual state of the business that we're expecting to do a step up CEO in. If the business requires transformation and turnaround first, and then it can be positioned for growth, you're going to need someone that's, you need to calibrate where your risk is in terms of bringing in someone who might be very strong growth background, but may not naturally be designed around an end-to-end transformation, uplift, cost journey, everything else. So you need to think hard about that. If that work's been done or mostly done, and it really is about driving growth, that's an easier engine to be in, because then you can have someone say, well, just go really double down on the go-to-market. And then the other bit, of course, is revenue leaders, and it's no disrespect to me. I was basically one of those, but 4.5 years later, almost coming up for 5 years, the difference between thinking like a senior, you got a senior seat at the table, you're on the exec committee as a CRO or whatever you are, the difference between that and running a P&L and all the other aspects that make a proper difference in a business is quite large. because ultimately revenue leaders thinking about, how do I mostly minimize retention, but maximize the upsell, maximize the net new business contribution, and you get nice kind of commission plans, bonus plans, whatever they're going to be, and your responsibility ends there. But you're not really thinking about how the product market fit and the quality of that product market fit affects your ability to grow. You're not thinking about how the cost base needs managing very tightly as a trade-off against growth. So I think, anyway, yes, it's a long way of saying, if you are a revenue leader and if you're a chair and an investor thinking about that, you're still going to need someone who I suspect has the attributes to become more well-rounded from a P&L perspective, and actually step away from just thinking like a revenue leader. Ironically, it's like it should be taken for granted you understand how to do the revenue side, but in a way you need to step outside of that in order to be more effective overall, and then bring that to bear, that strength, that DNA you've got around sales, let's say, bring that to bear inside the business when it's on. Some people, some revenue leads will make that step and will really appreciate it. Some might prefer to stay where they are actually. That's the context, I think, in which people should be making decisions, because it really is situationally dependent, I think.
And that's a good point. And that I mean, whichever way you look at it, whether you're hiring or looking to make that next step, probably need to think about what you really want to do. Like, do you really want to continue to is that what brings you all the joy, is just focusing on that growth? Almost to the extent where you just have no interest in anything else. I think the individual that can step up is curious about what else is happening and feels that that's something they would enjoy. Because if you, as you say, if you get that revenue leader, step up CEO who then just thinks, right, all I need to focus on is growth, I think, as you say, you probably become unstuck, because there are other parts of the business that will need attention. So great. Well, thanks a lot, Kit. That's been really interesting.
Thanks, Ryan.